You should get a message. There we go. Recording in progress already. That was quick today. So, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. And we have Stephanie on the line with us, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking archery. And before we get started, I want to let everybody know you can watch the podcast on my timeline as well as on Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. That's a good place to go because a lot of archers help you out. If you have questions, good place to get them answered. As well as you can watch it on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as if you want to listen to the podcast, it's free on audible.com as well as wherever else you listen to your podcast. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome to the show. Stephanie, how about if you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little something about you?
Well, my name is Stephanie Correa, and I have been shooting archery since the end of 2012. I, sorry, I'm getting over a cold or maybe
Oh,
COVID. I'm not quite sure. But I have been competing since the very end of 2012 and got real heavy into competing in the beginning of 2013, and just kind of been running with it since.
that's pretty cool. So, what got you started in archery?
I had a injury from when I was playing soccer. I was in a co-ed league, and I took a pretty bad hit, and doctor said I needed to take some time off of soccer, so I needed a new sport. And I decided, why not archery? It looks cool, looks fun. So I tried it out. I took a 2 hour do's and don'ts kind of thing and just kind of ran with it from there. It was very easy and natural from the beginning. And with a ton of practice, I became pretty good really quick.
That's good. It's always interesting, that you're doing one sport, you're doing soccer, and you get into archery. And you ever thought about going back to soccer?
I have, but I I guess I love archery so much. I also train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been doing that since like 2015. I'm quite preoccupied with those two sports that I don't really have time to take on soccer again.
Yeah. Well, between archery and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you get your hands full with a couple really good sports. So
Yeah, yeah.
things that you can use outside of just the playing field.
Oh, absolutely. Me and my friends always joke about, that they're gonna run to me when the zombie apocalypse hits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have the skills, and uh, but I guess a soccer play you'd be able to just kick them pretty good. But other than that,
Yeah. No, it helps with the endurance of running, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, do you mostly do tournaments? Do you hunt or?
I've only done hunting when I lived out in Kansas for 2 years, but I haven't done hunting outside of that. California has pretty strict regulations, and I do mostly tournaments, so I'm not too interested in the hunting, or at least it doesn't interest me enough to pursue it. A lot of my archery friends do hunting. I just would rather shoot animals that are not real than the real ones, I guess.
So you normally do the 3D targets?
Yeah, 3Ds and novelty shoots are my specialty. So like speed rounds, pop-ups, timed things. That's basically where I excel.
That that sounds like the more fun. I did a lot of the 3D. I didn't really do as much target. Most most of my target was just practice to get my skills down. And that's what I use shooting at spots for is develop my skills and because I normally just hunt, so the 3Ds are how I practice for hunting.
Yeah, 3Ds are great. Paper for me is definitely my kryptonite. I can hit an animal 30 yards, 50 yards, at tournaments. I'm not hunting. But you put a paper target in front of me at 20 yards, and all of a sudden I can't hit a target to save my life. I don't know if it's the circles, the rings, the colors, or what, but I just feel the most comfortable with 3Ds.
And that's what's nice about archery. There's something for everybody. You
Oh,
you
absolutely.
you prefer that and others like the known yardage 3D shoots, and some like shooting the spots, and there's all kinds of different ones. And me, I prefer the unknown yardage ones. I want to be able to judge yardage because I don't know where that deer's going to come out.
Well, that's true. That's very true, especially for hunters. I do specialize in unmarked yardages. I do really well in those. Marked yardages, for some reason, they throw me off. I think because I am an instinct shooter, I'm not a gap shooter or a string walker or anything. It makes it so that like once I hear what the yardage is, my brain's trying to do calculations it doesn't normally mess with, and then I'm all over the place. So yeah, it's definitely something that it doesn't matter what you like, whether traditional or compound. Archery has something for everybody.
Right. So you're shooting a recurve then?
Yes, I shoot a Bob Lee. It's a solid. It's three piece, but it's mostly wood, and it's what's required so I can shoot at the world level in the 3D archery. You have to have a wood bow, so I had to switch over from my 50-pound Hoyt Buffalo to a 43-pound Bob Lee wood bow.
Well, if that's your goal, then you got to shoot what you got to shoot there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was a tough transition in the beginning, used to the heavier poundage and just the grip on my Hoyt Buffalo. But honestly, it took me about 2 months of shooting the Bob Lee, and I undeniably fell in love with it. When I tried to shoot my Buffalo again, I was like, oh, it doesn't feel right in my hands anymore. The Bob Lee just shoots so smooth that it's hard to go back to something a little more clunky.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say, new archers. Well, what sport you want to do? Do you want to shoot targets? You want to, or is it mostly for hunting, or mostly just fling in the backyard? And then what fits your hand? What do you like in your hand? And that's the
Right.
important part is if you don't like what feels in your hand, go to the next one.
Oh, absolutely. You have to trust your equipment 100%. If there's any part of you that's like, man, this bow doesn't shoot right, or these arrows aren't flying correctly, then you're going to find that your accuracy and your confidence is going to be shot. So I definitely recommend to anyone new who's thinking about trying out archery, shoot as many bows as you can. Put as many of them in your hands as you can, whether it's a compound or a recurve or a longbow or a self bow. Just shoot them all. Shoot them all, because once you have the right one in your hands, you're gonna know it. It's gonna feel smooth. It's gonna shoot smooth. You're gonna be like, this is it. This is the one. And that's what I recommend to everybody. It's just put as many bows as you can in your hand. Go to the archery shops. They're great about letting you shoot them. If you get hooked up with any kind of archery shop or archery tournament, like the archery community altogether is like super helpful. Like nobody wants to see somebody walk away. They want to get as many people involved as they can in shooting, whether it's for fun or competing. Like the archery community is always super helpful.
Yeah, I've heard many stories of um, the one is telling me he was shooting against somebody that he was competing against. He was struggling. The other guy come over and helped him. And, because he don't want to beat him in his worst, was beat him in his best. And then I did
Absolutely.
watch a little clip on or something about there was two in the Olympics, and the one archer they're fighting for gold, and the one archer had a problem with her bow. The other archer had the right thing to fix it, give it to him, fixed it, and they end up winning the tournament. So the girl that got helped won because she got help from the person who was ended up in second place. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that
archers are definitely a different breed as far as like we do want to compete against the best. It doesn't feel good to compete against somebody and have their equipment fail, or they just kind of had a rough day and you know it, and you don't do anything to step in and help them out. It just that you don't see that too often as far as like, oh, just let them struggle. No, you see people step up and be like, what do you need? How can I help? At my last tournament, somebody's serving was coming undone, and we flagged over the ref and was like, hey, equipment malfunction, she needs to go get this fixed. And she ended up winning. She ended up taking first place. She knocked me out of second place and took first place. And it's just like, you know what? Good for her. She just shot better that day. And nobody wants to win because somebody's equipment failed or anything like that. So yeah, I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to find archers that are going to help out and step in. Because if they're better, then you're going to strive to be better. And it just helps like
Right.
elevate you, you know?
Yeah, I've had other sports I've been in, and with there is somebody that's a much better technician at what your sport is, you're looking at them and you're better because they're better. Because just
Mm-hmm.
okay, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Why are they not struggling on this target where I'm struggling on this target? And we're standing side by side or standing in the same spot. What is it they're doing? So look at them, learn from them. That's the
Oh,
thing that,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's that whole steel sharpens steel. You know, you want to be with the best because you want to shoot the best. And when you are with the higher level people, it elevates you and then it elevates them. And it's just this ongoing snowball effect kind of thing. And it works in your favor. And I think
right, it
archers
does.
have figured that out. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of sports are that way. I used to speed skate, and I was talking to one of the guys that comes all the time, and him and the guy he was fighting for the national title. They get the record, and one would
Mhm.
get it, the other one would break it, then the other one would break it, and in the same event, they both broke their old record. So they're just pushing, 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 and it's just something. It's like what is going on, and there's so many different methods and just shooting the bow, just shooting a recurve. There's each person has their own way of doing it,
Oh,
and
absolutely. You
yeah,
find all kinds. You find people who shoot straight up and down. You find people who can't into their bows, people who prefer wood arrows over the carbon. And, even the aluminums, I still see people competing with. So there's literally something for everybody in archery.
now when you're judging yardage, what is the process you go to judge that yardage? That's always the challenge for all us hunters or 3D shooters that are shooting unmarked yardage is how do I estimate that distance?
Um, I tried to learn how to judge yardage. I'm terrible at it. Yeah. So that's why I'm an instinct shooter. I think because of how many years I've been shooting, and just walking up to different distances, and kind of shooting different angles and not just always shooting the 20-yard line or not always shooting the 30, learning what the in between feels like and looks like. For me, it's the size of the animal. And I guess kind of taking the size of the animal and how it looks to me as to get an idea of where I need to place the arrow on the animal. But I don't really do a whole lot of judging yardage. And I know that I like to reach the highest levels. Um, you have to do that. I have not been able to do that. I've reached, world level shooting with the U.S. team 2 years, 2 times in a row because it's every 2 years. And I look forward to making the team again next year. But I stick with what I know, which is to be an instinct shooter and not worry about the yardage, but trust all of the work that I put in prior to that to be able to hit where I want on an animal.
Yeah, that there's something said to be an instinct where you look at it and your body learns where to go. And when I shoot my recurve, I don't shoot it a lot just because, um, well, we talked about earlier, I can't pull it back right now. But one of the things that I would do is I'd look at the target and I'd draw back, and then I'd go through the motion of the shot, and a lot of them use the tip of the arrow to aim, and it's like if I'm going to look at the tip of the arrow, I'm not looking at the target. So how am I going to hit the target? Because I'm focusing on the tip of the arrow. And
Uh,
so I
yeah,
don't look at the tip of the arrow.
a lot of people don't. I recommend when people have that, like they struggle with that. My suggestion to them is kind of put arrow on target, and then once your arrow's on target, eyes on target. That way, you kind of have an idea, but you always want to be looking where you want to hit because your body kind of just auto corrects. It's like driving a car a little bit.
Yeah.
You're not micro, like you're not adjusting it every little while, but you're just doing micro adjustments as you're holding the wheel. And I kind of feel like archery, when you shoot, that happens. So I always tell people arrow on target if that's what you're using, and then eyes on target because your arrow's not going to start moving all over the place. Most people can hold a bow pretty steady.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't start off at the tip of the arrow, but some like look at the tip of the arrow, and that's a good point for those that are still struggling. Look at the point, then focus on where you want the arrow to go, because that's what I do to start with. I focus where I want the arrows. I concentrate only on the impact point, and I draw it up. Now, do I hit it all the time? No, because I'm shooting a recurve. I'm not that good at it because I don't practice enough to get that good. And uh,
Oh, everybody misses. Everybody misses. Even at the highest levels. Like if you look at any of the tournaments, like the World 3D tournaments, the team events and stuff like that, in the individuals, you'll see that even at that level, people are dropping arrows. No one is perfect. We're human. So when it happens, it's like, yeah, I'm human. I dropped it. Oh well, you move on.
now, when you drop one, what do you do to get over that dropped arrow that you just shot?
So we me and a group that I shoot with, a lot of them are in California. We when we want to get focused, we kind of joke around a little bit, and it's just like, all right, time to constipate. My buddy Jerry, whenever we weren't focusing, he's like, constipate, constipate. So it became this joke, but it was also a reminder of like, okay, you go back to your fundamentals. Are my feet good? Are my hips good? All right, body solid, and then looking to the arrow, like looking to the target with your arrow or whatever your method is. And then really concentrating on what it is your form is and what it is your process, like going through each checklist of the process. Because normally when we drop an arrow, it's because somewhere along our process, we just kind of, dropped the ball or got comfortable with just racing through something or skipping past something. So it kind of is like the way to, all right, we're starting all over. That arrow's gone, but let's focus on this next one. And you just start doing the checklist of everything to make sure that you're going through your process correctly. Because that arrow in the ground, there's nothing you can do about it. You can get mad and miss more arrows, or you can focus on what you're doing and try not to let it happen again.
Yeah, or try and psych somebody else like, don't miss. Yeah, what's most likely they're gonna just miss.
Yeah, no, you see, the brain doesn't know how to focus on, how to not focus on the negative. So if I tell you, don't focus on a gray elephant with a pink trunk and purple horns, well, your brain can't do anything but to actually visualize what it is, the words that are coming out of my mouth. So no matter how much I tell you, don't think about that elephant, don't think about the gray elephant with the pink trunk, your brain's already like thinking about it. So what we do, and what like most of the people I shoot with is like we focus on what we want, not what we don't want. So, a good strong shot or a clean shot, or focusing on where we want to hit the target. I'm going to hit it right here, or I'm going to focus on this versus what you don't want, because your brain doesn't know how to distinguish it. Once you put something in it, it's like, okay, we're focusing on this. It doesn't know how to minus things out. So
Yeah,
my recommendation is like focus on the things you want, not on what you don't want. If you have trouble with your release, then it's like, okay, clean release kind of thing. Or if it's something with like, don't drop your bow hand because we want to peek past to see where the arrow went. Okay, strong front hand, strong bow hand. Those are the things you want to focus on, because your brain is always looking to reaffirm what you're telling it. If you're like, I can win this or I can hit this, and you hit it, your brain's like, oh, okay, we can hit it. So it's always looking for that reassurance and that confirmation of what you're telling it. So my recommendation to anybody is you want to focus on the things you want, not on what you don't.
that's a common story of anybody that's trying to perform any kind of level, no matter what it is, whether it's personal or sports or anything. That seems to kind of be the theme of any high achieving people is, focus on what you want, focus on that, and it'll eventually come.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It really does.
But like I've heard say, you can think all you want on your couch, about how you're going to make money, but eventually come take the couch from you because you're not doing anything. You actually got to do
No,
something, right?
absolutely. Yes, yeah, you got to put in the work. Absolutely. You have to put in the work. Without that, it's just mouth service and that doesn't do anybody any good, especially the person who's just talking. So, yeah, actually, yeah, absolutely. You focus on what you want while you're doing the work, not just hoping and praying that that's going to be the thing that saves you because you're thinking positive. No, you also have to put in the work.
So speaking of work, what's kind of your practice schedule?
Um, this is an off year for the US team. So my practice schedule is a little lighter. I practice more, like probably between 3 and 5 times a week on off years, depending on what the weather looks like. We've had a lot of rain recently, so you got to get out there and you can maybe get an hour of practice in before you got to get rained on. So there's that. But on years where we have US team trials and compete at Worlds, I'm practicing every day, sometimes twice a day, depending on if I get it early enough practice. And then there's like an afternoon league or something, I'll do that as well. But on off years, I'd say 3 to 5 times a week. Yeah.
That's that's still quite a bit of practice. I don't think a lot of archers do it more than maybe once a week, or even that on some
Uh,
of them. And some don't even do it once a week. They might do them once a year before hunting season.
yeah, that's common. Those are like the weekend warriors, but like
Yeah,
if archery is your thing and you want to make it your life, you kind of got to put in that work. Not it's not without saying like anything worth having you got to work for. It doesn't matter how good you are as a natural or how instinctive you are. Like if without the work, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed.
like most sports, any sports that I've been in, you have 3 to 5 to 7 practices a week, and sometimes you'll have a couple in the same day. And I used to competitive roller skate, and we had practices pretty much 6 days a week and probably 7 practices a week, and it just you don't do that, you don't get better. Um, it's anything less than 3, you're going backwards.
Yeah, you got to put in the work, and 9 times out of 10, you can tell when somebody is putting in the work because it shows in the fruits of their labor, and it shows in their shooting or how they compete, no matter what sport it is. Like you can stay stagnant and everyone can go past you, or you can, move forward with everybody else. And if you want to put in the extra time, that one of the things that what somebody told me once that it didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time, but later on I understood it was that extra mile is the loneliest mile. And I always thought it meant that like I needed to do above and beyond what everybody else was doing. And that was that extra mile. And that's why it was going to be the loneliest mile because outside of regular practice, you go and do more and do stuff on your own. But it's so much more than that because somebody who dedicates their life to something and that they want to achieve like the highest levels of it, other people looking in don't understand that. I've had people tell me in the past that I was burning the candle at both ends and down the middle, that I needed to not self destruct. And I couldn't understand it. I was like, but Olympians train way more than what I'm doing. So how is that possible? But people who are not driven the way like high level athletes are never going to understand it. And that's that part of that loneliest mile is like to everyone looking in, you look crazy. You're, always on the range or you're always practicing or you're always doing something. Like your life revolves around this thing. Well, but that's what it takes to become great. It's what it takes to become a high level athlete. So, like that extra work you put in, it's going to show and people are going to notice it and be like, wow, look at you, you're really good. But they're not always going to understand the work that goes into all of that. Like you have to put in the work.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. Now, somebody just starting out, getting their first bow is not going to be able to do, 3 to 5 times a week because they're just not going to have the strength or anything else. What would you recommend to somebody that's just picked up their first, let's say it's a recurve, and they just like to just shoot in the backyard, but yet they want to be good enough that, they're hitting their target, more times than not. What would you kind of recommend for them for like a practice routine or a schedule?
My recommendation would be to shoot every other day or every third day and not go nuts, because most of us tend to do what? We don't practice and then we want to shoot 200 arrows in one day. And then you're sore, and then it's like, oh, this isn't a lot of fun. I don't know if I really want to do this. So I would recommend, like, if you can, shooting Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and then, skipping a couple of days and shooting again. So you allow your body the chance to catch up with the fact that you're working muscles you haven't worked before or are not used to working, because archery muscles are very different than any other sport.
Yes.
But I would recommend, don't burn yourself out the first time. Don't shoot till you have blisters or your arm's so sore you can't lift it the next day. That's so counterproductive. If you got to shoot 50 arrows every other day, your progression would be so much better than shooting 200 arrows once a week. So go at an easy pace in the beginning because you're still developing the muscles for it. And don't overdo it. Like, just take it easy. It's baby steps. There's no reason to believe that in a few months you're going to be shooting as good as people who've been shooting for 12, 13 years. Like, it doesn't happen like that. You've got to consistently put in the time. So it's better to do smaller chunks every other day or every day than it is to try to knock it all out at once. And that's something I see all the time. People are like, they show up to tournaments and they're like, man, I haven't shot in a while. And I just shot 200 arrows yesterday and now my shoulder hurts. And I was like, well, that was a little bit counterproductive now, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely would be counterproductive to shoot that many, right before, just because you haven't done it, want to get good. And yeah, better off to
Right.
shoot slower numbers, what you can comfortably pull back. And I always tell,
And there's no reason for anybody to start off with a 50, 60, 70 pound traditional bow. On a compound, it's easier because you do have the wall and you're only pulling part of the poundage, but start off with a 30-pound bow, a 35. Like, realistically, you don't need anything heavier than that for competing. Like, there's countless tales of people blowing up their shoulders from pulling heavy poundage. So there's no reason to do it.
no. And I always tell new archers, if you can't pull it back slowly, like a deer's watching you, it's too much weight. So as you're drawing that bow, if you're struggling and moving around, yeah, it's too much weight. Back it down, shoot something comfortable, and you can build it up. I know my first compound bow that I got was 52 pounds, and as I wanted to, it go up to 70, so it's kind of like a little bit below the minimum. I think it. So I'm shooting it, and my first year I shot at 52 pounds, 2117 arrow, full length arrow with 145 grain broadhead on it. This is a very slow, heavy arrow at 52 pounds. And I'm shooting, I'm trying to, I shoot for a little bit and I crank it up a little bit, shoot, a few more months or whatever it is, and then I crank it up more and I get to 58, 59. It's like I just couldn't go any more than that. I was just struggling. It took a long time. I finally got to 60, and then everything started working. Then I was able to gradually go, pretty quickly go up to 70. And like, but it took me a long time to get up to 60 from 52.
Oh, absolutely. You have to give your muscles a chance to catch up. Otherwise, you're looking at injuries and whatnot. The tendons and the muscles grow at different rates. So you have to be careful with your body, especially if you want to be able to shoot late into your, 60s and 70s, if that's something you're planning on doing. Like, you got to go easy. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be able to shoot in my 70s because I'm 70 now. So I want to get back to be able to shooting my bow. And, I've got some elastic bands that I'm using to build the muscles back up. And, that's working out okay for that. But, yeah, it's, one of those things that, don't overdo. And I see a lot of them, trying to shoot too much weight. They're pushing their shoulders up. So now their shoulders are lifted up. So the muscles and bones aren't holding it. Your tendons and your shoulders are holding together. And, oh, yeah, you're going to have shoulder problems. Yeah. Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah.
because your body is just not, you know, storing the energy correctly. Your muscles aren't doing the job, the tendons aren't doing a job, the joints aren't doing a job, and you get all that lined up, and you can shoot a lot longer. And as we get older, we have to start cranking the weight down a little bit, because it takes a little bit more to keep it going. I'm probably not going to be able to shoot 70 anymore. I may have to drop down to 60, which means I can take my hunting bow and recite all my pins because they're all set up really perfectly for 70. And this is the arrow, and everything here is all perfect, you know. So I've got all the pins on there, and I may have to redo them. But I don't take long shots anymore. So, 20 and 30 is all I would need, because then I can use the 20 and 30 for reference, make sure they're within my range. But I just look at them, and I judge the yardage to them, and if there's open fields, that's a little more difficult. I started off I had a 30-foot rope with me, and I'd put one end loop one end on the peg on the tree, and I'd go out 30 feet, put a marker, flip it off the peg, pull it out, another 30 feet, mark it, and then I go another 30 feet. Now I got 30 yards marked.
Nice. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I've never heard anybody doing that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Now that was before rangefinders. They didn't have rangefinders, or at least that non-military had. So that I didn't have any way of range finding it other than doing that. And if I'm on the ground, what I discovered, my 20, 30, 40, and 50-yard pin, if I get all of them on the deer, I know it's a close shot. And then if I can't get them all, then it's a further and further. And, if I can only get 2 pins on it, it's way beyond me even trying to shoot. I just don't shoot long shots, just because I don't want to take a chance of wounding the animal, because I want it in the freezer. I don't want it dead.
Right.
I
You
don't
want
want
to
the
do the
food.
most ethical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to eat it. I don't want anything else to eat it.
All right. Well, I love your creativity. If I ever get back into hunting, I am definitely trying that.
Yeah. And I always like to, even if you have not with the rangefinders, you can always range it. Well, I don't teach how to judge yardage. So, like at 3D tournaments, if they allow you to have a rangefinder on there, because I will use it, and I'd always judge the yardage, make the shot. If it's not a good shot, range it. If it's a good shot, what do I care what it says it actually was? Because I ranged it correctly. And one of the things I do that helped me when I was shooting all the time is, if your form is off a little bit, sometimes it's hard to figure out what's going on with your form, and you can't shoot enough when you're actually on the range walking between targets. So what I do is, I had a piece of loop material. I got my string loop material in a big roll, and so I made a loop that goes around my thumb, and then it was my draw length with another loop at the other end. I could hook my release into it and draw back and shoot. And if that string left my thumb straight to my target, I know my form's back. Otherwise, it'd hang up on your thumb. It'd hang up, or it'd go off to the side or something. Now you know your form is off.
Yep.
And then you keep adjusting until your form is right. You push straight to your target. Now I shoot a closed stance, perfectly closed stance. But if I don't teach that when I go to help out, like Nebraska Game and Parks has a lot of events, and we teach a lot of women how to shoot, and they're my favorite students.
They listen, don't they?
That's right, they listen. And
Yeah.
but we teach an open stance, because depending on, like, the long bows, they're so long, and it's easy to hit that arm. If you have an open stance, if you don't hold it correctly, if you're gripping like a bat or something, you don't hit that arm as much, and it opens you up to keep your chest out of the way and everything else. And with that closed stance, if you have that arm wrong, you can have a problem. As well as the real long traditional bows, you always got to watch on that. As an instructor, I tell all the ladies, do not shoot until I give you an okay. Draw back, do not shoot. Okay, everything's safe. A lot of the traditionals use that chest guard. Even the guys use them. Because anything scraping across your chest or your arm or anything is not going to feel good. I've hit my arm before. When I was shooting way too long, a draw length. I was shooting there for a while. I was shooting a 32-inch draw length compound. I didn't know any better. And I went in the shop and it's, how's that feel? Okay. I didn't know any better. I think I only shot a compounded, a few times that what my brother had. And,
Uh-huh.
that was in the early 70s. It was like, how's this feel? Okay. I was arm locked out all way back here. I'm 29 and a half, what I really am. So I was drawn back 2.5 inches further than I'm supposed to. And, that's, you're going to hit your arms and stuff like that. And I actually hit my arm one time shooting at a deer and I heard it hit and they just kind of walked off. What I ended up doing is I severed an artery in the hip after I shattered the thigh bone. And I
Oh,
still was able to get it. So it still died. But where it laid down, I couldn't get to it from getting on the tree stand. You can't do that because they run off or try to run off.
right.
And that I heard it hit my arm. And now by having that little half inch shorter, I wear my thick heavy coat in the wintertime up here. Now you in California, you would never wear anything as thick as I was wearing because our weather gets down into freezing and below. And I haven't hit my big heavy parka ever since because I run a shorter one, have that correct grip where it goes between your hand and between your thumb and the little finger.
Hmm.
That's how most of us archers that have been in it for a while are shooting because it moves that arm out of the way. Last thing we want to do is hit that arm. And I imagine you probably hit it
Yeah.
before, haven't you?
Oh yeah. I've done it before. Luckily, with the bobbly that I shoot now, I don't have to wear an arm guard, and if it ever catches my arm, it's because I'm doing something terribly wrong. Um, so yeah, I don't have to worry about that too much. But my buffalo, with it being 50 pounds, and when I first started shooting it, I whacked my arm pretty good and broke skin. And was like, yeah, I definitely need an arm guard. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, that's safety. You got to think about that. Archery can be dangerous if not done safely. Now, the people who get hit in archery are normally like hitting the arms. It's fairly safe even in hunting. Um, I do know of one guy that got shot. Um, he was walking out, and it was basically ended hunting season and didn't walk out. And the other guy just basically heard a noise and looked at it and thought it was a deer. And at that last light, you've been out hunting at that last light, everything looks like a deer. And
It's
just
true. It's true.
new hunter and didn't realize that, hey, if you don't see the four legs and the brown hair and the tail, it's like it's not a deer. And end up shooting. And because when I had my store,
Right.
they both had come in my store, so I heard both sides of the story.
Yeah. Archery is like the third safest sport in all of sports. I think tennis, and I can't remember what number one was, but overall, it is a safer sport than most. I
Right.
mean, you do have to be careful not to shoot, a weak arrow through a strong bow, or check your arrows. Even if you're hitting targets, it's there. You don't know if it hit, somebody else's point or insert that got stuck in there, kind of thing. So you always want to check your equipment. I have seen arrows go through people's hands because they didn't check their arrows and it broke off. Now, both of those instances were with compounds, but it's always good to still check your equipment no matter what,
Right.
because you are in charge of your own safety.
Right. And I had one guy when I was working at one of the stores come in and had a nice little three-sided mark scar on his hand up between his index finger and thumb, right in between there. Didn't notice it, but the arrow had fell off and it was just short enough. The broadhead was sitting on the back of his hand. Didn't
Oh.
notice it and pulled the trigger.
Mm.
It went through his hand. Well, and that's also why when I set it up, I set them up so the arrow is in front of the hand. So if it does fall off, the shaft is on your hand and the point is not behind. Because now if it's stuck on, how do you get it off? Because you're already full draw. You're trying to shake it off because the point is
Yeah.
probably stuck into your hand. What do you do?
Right.
So that's why I always made sure that arrow is in front of your hand for hunting arrows. Um, I never liked the overdraws, which we had back to starting because our bows are so slow. To getting speed, you put overdraws on them, so make that brace height shorter. And yeah, that was definitely something that I'd already been doing. And the guy come in and showed me, and that's the first guy I seen that had shot one through his hand because he didn't even notice it. And he did after he pulled the trigger on it.
I'm
But
sure he felt it then. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and the number one causing for archers to get injured is tree stands. And the top way of doing it is homemade tree stands.
Mm,
That's the most dangerous one. And I actually interviewed Nebraska Game and Parks. They've got a couple of volunteers that teach the hunter safety as far as the tree stand safety. And they've given a whole bunch of stats. And I've got, looked on one of the podcasts. I got one, probably 10, 15 of them ago. That we went a whole thing. We talked for about an hour and a half just on tree stand safety. And, if you're up in a tree stand and you use your harness, how do you get down? Because you got about 5 minutes before you're dead anyway. Because what happens if you don't have, that's why a lot of the new ones now have that little loop
yeah.
so that you can relieve the pressure. What happens is the straps tighten up around your legs, blocks off your blood flow to your legs, it restricts it. And like the acid builds up, I think it's like one of the acids build up. And then when you finally free yourself, all that rushes through your body, you end up with a heart attack anyway and die.
Oof. Okay.
So
Yeah, I didn't know all that.
yeah, that's something that, I like to try and mention that each time because a lot of the listeners may not have seen that one. Go back and watch that one, or even got my YouTube channel, Learn for Yourself. It's out there as well under the some of the hunting or the archery playlists. And
Okay.
I can leave a link in the description too for that. But yeah, that's something that you always got to be careful of is falling out of your tree stands, and what to do, proper way to set them, and there's all kinds of stuff. So hey, anybody has questions, get a hold of me. We can go through and help you be safe. And
Oh, absolutely.
there's a lot of stuff on there. And then, just setting up bows like we've talked about, making sure your arrows find correctly and make sure, all this other stuff. And like, don't take an arrow designed for recurve and shoot it in the compound. You're
Yeah.
probably
Or
going to
don't
snap it.
don't pick up an yeah, don't pick up an arrow that you found on the ground behind a target and be like, "Ooh, I could shoot this." It's like you really don't want to do that because you just don't know, and it's putting yourself in danger, you know. So yeah, that's I didn't know that though about the tree stands. The hunting I did were inside of blinds on the ground, so I had no idea.
Yeah, and I've heard of several uh, blind hunters where they end up shooting through their blind instead of through the shooting window because they don't realize the arrow is at your mouth, your sights are up by your eyes, you're off that much right to start with because they start a big gap. And like at
Yeah.
5 feet, you might have to shoot it for like 70 yards if you have pins on them just because you're so
Hmm.
close. And then it gains, and I was creating some videos in my basement, and my basement's just like, well, it's an 1890s house, and the basement's just basically just dug out, and there's a brick wall that goes up, all probably about shoulder height. My target's
Okay.
sitting on top of it, so it's actually up. So I have to draw back, lean back slightly a little bit, so I keep my same form, and so I can shoot because otherwise I don't want it bouncing back. Because I was creating videos, we were probably 10 feet away from the wall. If you shoot an arrow at 60 pounds at 10 feet away into a brick, it's going to come back at you at probably 50 pounds of pressure. And that knock is just dangerous to the point.
Oh no, absolutely. Anything that close, definitely. I've seen people shoot steel targets at 20 yards. And it actually happened to my buddy Jerry. He was trying to shoot the hole in like a rabbit, a steel target,
Yeah.
and he hit the target, and the arrow came flying past his face on the way back.
Oh,
Yeah. So everything has its inherent issues and whatnot, but just realizing that, hey, this steel thing, it could come back at me. I should be ready. We all knew it was a possibility, but didn't really think it would happen. So when it happened, it was like, oh, okay, we should all just keep an eye out or stand back away from that. So yeah,
yeah.
shooting at close range, you got to be careful.
Yeah, definitely when you're shooting at something they can bounce off of. And yeah, yeah, normally what the steel ones I've shot at be like deer size ones, and deer size kill zones. And it's amazing how many people still can't hit the kill zone on the deer. Sometimes I'll put them at 20 yards, sometimes I'll put them a little bit further, but 20-yard shot, any hunter should never miss that kill zone.
Right. Right. If you've been practicing and you know what you're doing, you should be able to hit a kill zone at 20 yards. Like it's a pretty big area.
Yeah. Well, especially if you know the distance. Now, if you're judging the distance, that's a little different. Uh, I when I was down at PSC down in their dealer school, because I was a PSC dealer for several years, and they were telling a story of a group that come in and they were teaching them shooting stuff, and there was like three guys and a lady in there, and so they had their steel target out there, and this is okay. Um, who's go up first, and you shoot at distance you think you can make. First three guys go up and plunk the metal. And the lady that was down there, she walked up closer, 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 about 20 yards, and she hit it. The others are trying to do the long shots. And it's like, I'm not going to shoot longer than what I can. I don't want to waste an arrow. Then they weren't expensive they know. Now you're talking $12, $15 just for the shaft. Not counting, if you got a broadhead on it, those are sometimes
Hmm.
10, $15 a year. You've got to 20 to $30 in that arrow, because I don't shoot the cheap arrows. I shoot the comp pros is what I hunt with. That's all I shoot. I don't shoot the cheaper ones, just because um, we did a test one time where a friend of mine was shooting like a 3,000th arrow, and he's the same draw length than I am. So I gave him one of my comp pros. He was shooting like a Beeman, I think it was, and of course I'm shooting PSC shafts, and so I had it all set up, same draw length, so didn't have to worry about the length arrow. I'm shooting more weight than he was, so I knew plenty fine, and he was grouping, maybe inch and a half groups, maybe 2 inch
Okay.
groups. Yeah, he was shooting them touching when I was shooting my arrows. That's the difference between 1 and 3,000 straightness. But a beginner's
Yeah.
not going to know the difference.
True. It's true. Plus, the beginner is going to have so much more to deal with other than the equipment because they're still trying to learn a form or where they want to anchor or how they want to try to, instinct shoot or gap shoot or string walk or, they've got so much more going on.
Yeah. Well, and this is with a compound, so that's a little bit tighter group. But yeah, that's what I always like to tell my new archers that when you're getting your bow set up, whether it be recurve, longbow, compound, crossbow's kind of a little bit different way to work on those because there's really not much to do on them. Uh, you know, like putting a stabilizer on. I've told this many times on here because I think it's so important. It's like, okay, try this table, get the cheapest stabilizer out. Okay, try it. Okay, maybe shoot with your eyes so you can feel it. Like, put the better one on, shoot it, feel any difference, and then shoot the more expensive one, and just keep going back and forth. Can you tell the difference? No, buy the cheap one.
Yep.
Why waste your money? Take that extra money and give it to me or a coach to teach how to shoot, and then you're going to realize, oh, there is a difference between the two of them.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, like I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's always something that's always got to think about when you're new. And what kind of things like that have you come across, either that you figured out or your coaches taught you, that helped you with uh, developing your skills a little bit more?
Um, I've had a few people try to help me with what I call my ballerina, which is instead of pulling straight through a shot, I end up doing this number. And I got to be honest, my buddy Nick Hart, who is like the reason I am where I am right now, for a while tried to get to help me, but if I'm 100% honest, my ego wasn't ready to let go of like I'm shooting really well the way I'm shooting. I don't need to change anything. Until more recently, I'd say the like last year and a half, where I was like, okay, this is a problem. I need to fix it. And with the help of several people, I went to Nick. He tried to help me for a little bit. I was kind of resistant with him because he's my training partner. So I think it was one of those, he's too close for it to like sink in. And then I reached out to Tom Klum, to get some help from him, and he helped me understand some stuff with that. And then Matt Yaka, who also helped me with that portion of it. And then at Worlds, I finally had somebody explain it to me in a manner that made sense, like it resonated with me. So it wasn't until the end of last year that it actually got better. I had somebody explain, like we all talk about like rotating the back muscle so that you get that, pull through kind of thing. He explained it more of like putting a pencil or something in the arm and pinching it, and that'll help me get through because I tried everything else, but it didn't. I know what I need to do, but knowing how to do it was something totally different. And it was one of my teammates' dads that kind of explained that to me, and all of a sudden it just clicked and it made sense. But for me, my biggest struggle has always been my release. I think because I got used to being a snap shooter, and then just like speed rounds and the novelty stuff, I was really good at that. So it was like, well, why do I need to change anything? But then when I competed at the world level, I realized, all right, I'm at a level, but if I ever want to get into like the top 10 in the world, this is something that I need to change. So for me, it was definitely the release. I struggled with the release for a really long time. I kept wanting to like power through it instead of letting it happen on its own. And it took a handful of people for me to finally get to a point where it made enough sense to me, and I had enough different instructors or methods shown to me that I was able to kind of pull pieces from each one to make it fit me. Because I've always been an advocate of listen to everybody, but only do what works for you, because we're not the same. We're not built the same. We have different body structures, different strengths. So for me, it took several people to fix the release portion of it, and not pluck or ballerina. So yeah, it took an army of people to help me with that one thing.
You're fighting off an army of people.
So everybody wants to help. It just sometimes not everyone can explain it in a manner that resonates with you or makes sense. So you just keep going until you find something, or you're able to piece enough things together to make it work for you. So my advice with any kind of struggle you're having in archery or in any sport is reach out to a bunch of people, and listen to everybody, but only do what works for you. And then the other thing that I've always like adhered to is don't ever take advice from somebody who is not in a place you want to be, whether it's like financial or what your beliefs are, or archery. If they are not at a high level and it is not someone who has achieved things, but more of just someone who coaches people but never really did anything with it, I struggle to listen to that, because it's like I want to know it from the people who've achieved the things I want to achieve.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they can't teach you anything, but that's where that listen to everybody but only do what works for you comes in.
Yeah, and I found it works best. I have a method that I teach. I teach exactly like how I do it, and then I explain why I'm teaching that, and then we modify it to fit the person.
Right.
So this is what I do. This is how I do it. This is why I do it. And then we're going to look at it. Okay, is that going to work for you? Because each person is different.
Oh, absolutely.
I always have my wrist kind of bent down, so I'm pushing with the heel part of my hand. Well, if your hand won't go there because of an injury, you can't do exactly what I said. And so now we have to modify it a little bit. I had one guy had MS. He could not bend his arm. He had to keep it locked out, or it just shook so bad he'd never hit. So we locked the arm out. Well, I had to change other things because that meant he's going to smack his arm every time he shot. And so then we had to make adjustments. And, that's kind of the fun part of being a coach is, okay, here's where we're going to start. Let's fix it for you. And there's other methods, like you were plucking, there's other methods you can work through, other things you can think about in concept. And one of the things I heard, I listen to Jake Comiskey sometimes because I'm not real good at shooting traditional equipment. And he said something about string walking, and I was watching the Netflix flow String Walker, Skinwalker Ranch, the Skinwalker Ranch, and I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. I had no clue what it meant. So I'm watching him and he's explaining how it works. And it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Then I eventually did interview somebody that does it. So he was explaining it a little better. But, what he explained is everything's kind of a circle. So when you come back here, you're circling around your face, as you're tightening up those shoulders, everything's a circles, everything's in a circle. And he explained it that way. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So now then, my workout bands, I come back to here, I'm go through the whole process, breathing out, get to here and then hold for a second, and then let the rest of the air out as I drag my hand across here, and I think kind of my thumb kind of touches my neck or something. But one thing I don't do is ever put my thumb behind my neck. Not only is that not very productive, but it also hurts your thumb. And it's not consistent. So I'm gonna teach that with a compound, with a release. Yeah, yeah, the thumb never goes behind you. It goes underneath, if anything, underneath your jaw. And that's some of the things that you know I've done, and the ways I teach is that way. And being in martial arts, that's how I want that straight line, because if you're going to put power into something like breaking a board, that power has to be straight to that target. If you're off at an angle, you're not going through the board, you're hurting your hand. The only way you don't hurt your hand when you go through the board. You only hurt it when you don't go through. So you got to make sure you go through the target. And that same idea I use in shooting, well, it's a compound, recurve, or whatever. So I'm thinking through the target, not the impact point. I'm thinking past that endpoint point. So impact point. Control talking this morning or tonight. So now that I'm shooting, I'm thinking through that. And that's all I'm thinking about is where I want the arrow to end up. I want it to be buried past that X in the target. If they're shooting papers, or, the kill zone on a deer, the 8 ring, 10 ring, or whatever rings they have on them.
Right, right. Well, that's a good way of looking at it for sure. I like that. I like that method.
And that's what's nice about here, is because I've got some ideas that you may not have heard. You've got some ideas that I may not have heard, and I'm learning from all of the archers I get a chance to talk to, because it's nice talking to archers. I get to talk to them all over. It was like, would we have ever met or talked without the connection here in archery and getting on the podcast? You're out in California. I'm in Nebraska. I'm not going to go to California anytime soon. Now, you may come to Nebraska before I go to California, but still,
Yeah, most likely.
So now if you're coming through Nebraska, then you say, hey, hey, I'm coming through. Let's meet up for lunch or something. And, because a good stopping point, and we meet up and chat in person. But, it's great being able to talk to people all over the world, and especially when talk, somebody across the pond, in one of the other countries. And, that's the fun part, is how the archery community here is in your world is exactly the same it is in somebody half across the world. The same thing, if you go to any place and you have a bow in your hand and there's other archers around, they may not be able to talk to you, but you know what? The phones and Google Translate, you can talk to anybody.
That's true.
Some of them now, they got them earphones that they'll translate for you right in your ears. I've
I've
never
heard
tried
of
them.
that.
They seem like they might be a gimmick, but who knows?
I mean, I'd be willing to try it.
Yeah. Now, I think English somewhat well. I understand it. It's the other languages I'm a few words here and there I'll understand, but not enough carrying conversation. But you don't
Okay.
have to be able to speak to somebody. I had a kid come in when I was roller skating as working there, and didn't speak any English, and trying to learn how to skate. So I'm kind of basically showing stuff, and a lot of new skaters like to bend over, put the head down, and have to keep up, look straight, and then just got little things there here and there, and in archery, if I can draw the bow back and show you what I want, and then you can see it, and then I can correct you, okay, draw it back and then hold, and then I can make corrections, and then I can teach without basically saying a word in your language because I don't know it. You can do that because it's all kind of understand the same thing. Now, some are difficult. Somebody new never picked up a bow, but you can do that. And now with the videos and the quality of the phones, the videos, you can teach right on the Zoom call. I've done it.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Last year, I met a gentleman from Turkey who didn't speak almost any English, and he wanted to learn how to shoot a bow. So through a whole lot of hand gestures and demonstrations of what to do, and a little bit of the Google translation, I was able to teach him and get him hitting targets no problem in what was it, a 3 hour session. And that's somebody who didn't ever touch a bow, but had seen and wanted to do it and reached out. And I was like, yeah, no problem. We'll figure it out. It's a lot of hand motions and stuff, but you do find people who want to learn it, and it doesn't matter if there's a language barrier or not. Like, it is something you can teach without a whole bunch of words. So it is super cool.
Yeah, that's what's cool about things like this, that you can teach them without even speaking to them if you don't need to.
Yeah. So, okay. How long have you been shooting archery? I'm not sure that I saw that anywhere.
Yeah, you didn't, because I'm really sad. I started shooting in the 60s when the only option was wood or fiberglass arrows in recurve or longbow.
Hmm.
And your option for arrows was wood, aluminum, or fiberglass for fishing. There was no compounds. They didn't even get
Right.
developed until late 60s when somebody developed the first one, and they weren't commercially available to the mid 70s. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't know that. I was born in the 80s. So,
yeah. And for fletching, you had your option of feathers, or feathers, or they had some rubber ones on the fishing arrows, which didn't do any good for fishing arrow because you got a string tied to it for it to go straight. But that was it. The veins did come in until I forget when they come in, but they weren't really available. And I still shoot feathers, French feathers. I just never switch from them. And
okay.
not for hunting, that's good because it helps stabilize your broadheads because I shoot a fixed blade. I haven't switched over to mechanicals. I just had too much good luck with the Muzzy fixed blade.
You got to stick with what works.
Yeah. Well, and I had, not really plugging Muzzy, but to plug Muzzy, but I was at when I had my store about 20 some years ago, 24 years ago, I think it was. Uh, I was shooting, trying to get ready for hunting season after I closed. So I got my broadhead target up there because I'm not shooting at a regular target as it just tears them up. And I missed all the targets completely, shot above it.
Oh.
Concrete block wall. That broadhead hit that concrete block wall. Shaft fell down. I go up and look at it. The broadhead stuck in the concrete block wall. The insert's cracked in half, and the other half, the insert and the arrow is sitting on the ground. Broke back about an inch, inch and a half. I reached up and pulled that broadhead out of that. Left a nice little three-sided hole in the concrete block, and I couldn't tell you which one it was because it didn't hurt the broadhead. And
Wow.
plus,
So the kinetic energy blew up the arrow, not the broadhead.
yeah, yeah. And I cut the arrow back about 2, 3 inches and give it to my son. He was, 5 at the time, so um, he was shooting real light pound bow. Like I think I don't remember if he was still on the 5 pound bow. If we had him something a little bit bigger at the time, but not shooting anything heavy, so he could shoot the rest of it. And yeah, it didn't even hurt the broadhead.
That's an awesome. Okay. All right. Yeah, I shoot muzzies too when I hunt, but I haven't
Oh,
hunted in a couple of years, so
yeah. Well, you're doing into jiu-jitsu, and then you've got your archery, and getting ready for Olympics. So you're spending a lot of time doing other things than hunting. And I think you said it's not always the most advantageous to hunt in California. So
right, right. Yeah. No, it's doable. It's just I'd rather not have to deal with all the red tape. Where Kansas, you got your hunter's license, safety course, and then they give you a map of where you can hunt, and there you go. But it's a little more complicated in California, and you got to travel further. So it wasn't something that interests me. Not yet. Maybe later down the road.
yeah, move someplace closer to the hunting areas, or
Yeah,
move out of
maybe in the
California.
future.
Someplace has, move out of California where there's a place where you have good hunting land.
Right. Um, so What got you into archery?
Uh, just when I was a kid, that's just something I was interested in, and so I picked up a bow. It was a little 25-pound fiberglass recurve, and I just started flinging arrows. I made my own target. I took a cardboard box and stuffed cardboard in it, and I didn't shoot at the ends. I shot at the sides of it, not realizing that shooting at ends is a little easier. So I made a little target. And I'm shooting at them, just some wood arrows, and I was just shooting for fun. And then when I think back in the 70s, my brother bought one of the bare whitetail two bows. And at college, I think it was in college, high school. I don't remember. It was one of the places now, one of the schools, they had archery. So I took his bow and I started shooting a bit more there. And then eventually in the late 70s, I was able to get my first compound bow. And that's when I told you about that was 32-inch straw length. I went in there and it's like, how's it feel? Oh, okay, I don't know. It's like, I didn't know any better. And then
Right.
that one ended up breaking. The riser broke in half,
Oh,
like 2, 3 weeks before hunting season. I'm down there, making sure everything's all going together and I'm shooting and it's my sights are off. So I adjust my sights. I'm shooting again, shoot 2, 3 shots and they're both off. I'm moving again, both off. This went off for a little while and then I said, I'm going to go up close and see where it's at. I shot, I'm holding the bottom half of my bow in my hand. The top half comes back and smacks me in the chest. Riser in
oh,
half. And the company, High Country, bought that company out. So I contacted them. They sent me a new bow and a 32-inch straw length because that's what that one was. I didn't know anything then. And so I get that. And then it comes in and the stickers, it's just all messed. They're gonna send me new limbs. In the meantime, I went to one of the archery shops and bought my first PSE, and I kept
okay.
that for many, many years. Um, and I forget the name of that, which brand that was, or which model it was. It's been so long ago now. And I set that up, and so I'm setting that up, and then for hunting season, and then in '95, I went to NFA had a shooter school and instructor school, and I went down for that. It was like $300. This, of course, '95. That's a little
A
chunk of
lot of
money,
money.
but I was an
Yeah.
engineer, so it's not like I was, it was huge amount of my paycheck, but still, it's quite a bit of money to put into a bow when your set aluminum arrows are running a dozen of the double X 78s was a 1.5 thousand straightness, the straightest aluminum you could get. Those were running like 65 dollars a dozen. And so back then that was expensive for arrows. And so I got that bow. It's all set up, 32-inch draw length. I go down there and measure your draw length, and he says, you're 29 and a half. It's like on a Friday. And so the first night was mostly just getting everybody fit bow correctly. Saturday and Sunday was the rest of the teaching and well as instructors school to get, their certification to be instructor. And so now Saturday, I'm trying to make my bow go from 29 or from 32 to 29 and a half inches. That's
How's
a
that
lot to
working?
change because if it's not 29 and a half, then there's no reason to continue because what he's teaching you can't do with that longer draw length. Well, strings and cables, I was able to get it. So I got it down to 29 and a half and I'm shooting and I was like, this is too short. I don't like this. Too short. It was too short. I didn't really like it. And because I was just so stretching out. And I've had others that I've shortened them up and it's, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. Okay, well, we'll make it longer, but don't bother coming back when you have a problem shooting because I know I went through exactly the thing you're going through. So, so then after we shoot in the class for a while and learn all this and going through, and that's the whole story on what we was doing to learn back tangent related, because then it was just like, oh, pull the trigger, just like any other trigger. You just pull it. No, you don't. But that's what I thought at the time. And
Uh-huh.
uh, after I went through that, and now I shoot 29. So I went from 32 to 29, 3 inch shorter draw length. And that extra half inch is how I talked about earlier. I don't hit my arm. I don't hit the big heavy coats. And that extra half inch just seemed to fit better. Once I learned the proper technique, now then it felt even better having that little half inch shorter. And I'd probably tweak a little bit here and there, but I shoot, 29 is what I normally shoot. My arrows are always cut to 29 and a half because I want that arrow in front of my hand for the reasons we talked about earlier. I don't want it, anywhere near my hand because if you got the broadhead on, you get fingers, you reach up, touch that broadhead, you just slice your finger open in the middle of the winter time, and they don't heal very well in the winter, and they hurt. And now then you got to try and bandage it, and now the deer comes by, you miss the trophy buck that you was looking for forever, and because you something crazy like cut your finger on your own broadhead.
It happens, but some people they got to live and learn it, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stories that I've done that I still remember. And when I was at one of the stores, I had my own store for a while, and I worked at Bass Pro and I worked at Cabela's. So between the three of them, I've got some pretty good stories on teaching people stuff. But I had this one guy come in. Look, I forget what he was shooting, but we got her interested in shooting. So we get her bow. I've taught her how to shoot and everything goes through the whole process. And she's, basically she thinks through what I told her. She says, I got Roy sitting on my shoulder, tell me what to do. And she come back a few months later with her husband, and he didn't like it too well because she was out shooting him.
Oh, okay.
He was. And he'd try and tell her something. He's like, no, you're Roy, tell me what to. She would pick which spot of the X-ring to put the arrow in.
Wow.
And he didn't like that because he couldn't do that. Because I didn't teach him. I taught her.
There's something to be said about teaching a significant other or somebody super close to you. It just doesn't happen. They got to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah. And what he was trying to tell him wasn't the same thing I told her anyway. So that's why I got telling me, she basically just put me on her shoulder, talking in her ear, and said, what did I tell her? And she listened, and she just go through this whole process, and she just got really good. And the worst part is when you have a kid, you're teaching a kid how to shoot, and dad's sitting there contradicting everything you say. He's telling it different. And it's like, finally, it's just like, you either say to him, you want me to teach him or you want to teach him? Because what you're teaching him is completely wrong. Or you just say, okay, I'm done, go home. Because no matter what you tell the kid, it's this young kid, he's not going to remember. He's going to do what his dad says.
Right, because dad's the ultimate authority. So
right.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a teenager, it might be different. They might do it different just because it is that.
So it all depends on the age, I guess.
Yeah. Now, my kids have always been pretty good at listening. When I teach how to shoot, that was pretty good. My oldest, when he was still pretty young, got his first Robin Hood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was pretty young. Back when I started stores, so that was been probably 20 years ago. And
okay.
He was maybe 10 or so. So I do that.
It's nice to see that you're passing that along though to the family, whether they stick with it or not. You're passing on a gift, basically, is how I've always seen it. When you teach somebody archery, is you're passing something on that if we don't do that, the sport will disappear, because the youth is the future. So it's super cool that you are able to teach your kids that.
Yeah, and the future in all hunting sports is the kids and the ladies. Get them involved as well. Like it's great that you're involved in it too, because it's a sport anybody can do, and why restrict it?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I whenever I see women who attend the archery shoots, to watch their boyfriends or significant other or husbands, I always ask, how come you let him have all the fun? Why aren't you shooting? And they always go, oh no, that's too much for me, and it's like 9 times out of 10, I can get them to at least try it and then realize like, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. But it is nice to see more women involved in the sport these days. It's still not anywhere near the numbers that the guys are doing, but it is nice to see that they're at least increasing.
Yeah, that's and it's fun, teaching new archers that no matter who it is, it's always nice when you see that light bulb go on and it's like, oh, now I know what you're telling me, you know,
Yeah.
or the person that's like, nah, I don't want to shoot, their spouses, doing it, whether it's the guy or the lady, it really doesn't matter. But it's like, do you want to shoot? It's like, nah, just shoot one shot. You sure you want to just take one shot? Okay. And the bow goes off. Ooh, can I do it again? Of course you can do it again. And then we just keep going and going. And next thing they're either not buying it then or they're buying it soon because they knew how much fun it was. Especially to get the compound and they go off and spent all the time, taught them how to do it and they're not getting hurt because they're doing it correctly. And then they get real close to that target and it's like, oh, that was pretty good. You're really good at this. And this is just your first day shooting the first 10 arrows.
Right, right. It is always a joy to see someone light up, especially when they really truly believe that they can't, that, oh, I could never do that, or I could never hit that target. That's too hard. And then you show them it's like it's actually not as hard as you think it is. And then they light up and then they go, oh, okay, I do want to be involved in this. This is a lot of fun. So it's a really big treat when you run across somebody like that.
Yeah, and why would they want to just sit there and watch somebody else shoot? That I've got things that I go do that my wife goes along with me and watches because she can't do it. But in this case, in archery, there's no reason why they couldn't do it. Maybe not compete at the level they're at, or maybe they just have fun in the backyard with them. Just start off. It's like you don't have to compete. I get a lot of them say, "Oh, I don't want to hunt." Did I ask if you wanted to hunt? I asked you if you want to shoot a bow. Doesn't mean you have to
Right.
hunt. It doesn't mean you
Correct.
have to
Correct.
shoot at home animals. It doesn't mean you can shoot at a box that has just nothing on it. You don't have to shoot at a target. Of course, everybody's going to want a target eventually, but um,
I think
it's
I think in general people are just scared of something new or scared of failing. And once they get past that, it's like they open up to the possibilities of, oh, okay, yeah, I could do this.
yeah, and even if you got physical problems, no matter what it is, we can overcome.
It's true. It's true. I mean, the Paralympics is a great example of that. Like you get people with all kinds of different uh, situations that they're working, with or against, and they're still out there out shooting most of us. And it's like, wow, it just depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to just do it for fun, or if you want to compete and you want to compete at the highest levels, archery can be, the thing you do once a year or the thing that you do every day. It just depends on what you want to do with it. And that's the beauty of it. It doesn't have to be one way or another.
Yeah, that's that's always a good thing is you can do it at whatever level you want. If you're satisfied with taking a 4 foot target and just hitting it anywhere on the target, having fun, then do it.
Yeah, just get out and do something, move around. Yeah, archery offers so much. You can do it indoors, you can do it outdoors, you can do the fun tournaments and novelty stuff, or you can get real serious into it. It just all depends on where you want it to go. And that's I think what I love most about it. Like you can, do it full time or you can just do it once in a while. Like there is no set criteria to what has to be done when you get into archery.
Yeah, definitely the beauty of it is the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine you have people come up to you all the time asking you questions about stuff, as you're shooting and out shooting them and you got questions you got to answer and that's the fun part, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. It's even funner being a female in the sport because it is like most sports, it's male dominated. So, when I shoot with a new group of people, like right now I'm doing altitude training, and I'm shooting with newer groups. They walk in and it's like, hey, have you shot before? It's like, yeah, I've shot a little while. Well, if you need any help, let us know. They're always very accommodating with like, if you have any questions, we can help you or we'll do our best to help you kind of deal. And I'm always like, well, I'll try not to embarrass myself, but I think I'll be all right. And then within a couple of shots, I realize like, "Oh, you've done this before." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
That's kind of fun to do, isn't it?
Oh, it's a ton of fun, especially with new groups. You kind of go in as this like, you just show up with your bow and everything. And um, I wear a back quiver, not a hip one. And so, it looks like I know what I'm doing because I've got all the right stuff, but they're never really sure. And it's always nice that the guys are super helpful, like, "Oh, let us know if you need anything." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And then I start out shooting them and it's like, "Oh, you've done this before." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe just a little."
Maybe just a little. Yeah. I've done several hundred shots a week.
So, but you got to love the Archie community because they're always willing to help. They just assume that whoever's shooting probably hasn't done a whole lot of it, especially when you're getting added to a newer group kind of thing. Um, but it's the beauty of archery is like people are just willing to help no matter what. I don't get a ton of questions outside of, like where's your next competition, those kind of things. I do teach. I am working with a young lady right now. She's 12 years old, Graceland. And she shoots with her 4-H group and she wanted a little bit of extra work, like helping her out with some things. So I'm working with her. But like the most common questions among anybody is like, well, how do you gap or how do you figure out how to hit a target that's further, closer, those kind of things. And it's different for everybody. So I just try to go through what it is that I do and then modify it as you do with your students, to work for them. So I don't get a ton of questions. Like it's only my second podcast.
Oh,
But on the range, not too many. It's normally people just letting me know if I need help with anything that they're more than willing to help out kind of deal. I think I get that more than I get people asking me questions. Yeah.
yeah. They just assume you're not as good as what you are because they never seen you shoot, and it's more like, well, and then sometimes you might just say, well, if you have any questions, just ask me. I can help.
uh,
And then they'll see you out
Definitely.
shooting them. They probably come over and ask questions. But it
Yeah.
wasn't, the
Yeah.
people didn't get their ego hurt.
Now I think most archers, are pretty solid in not being overly, like I know what I'm doing. I don't need any help kind of thing. I mean, you're always going to run across a person or a particular thing they're struggling with that it's going to be hard for them to open up or to understand. But like anything, like when people are ready to learn, they're going to learn. When people are ready to move past whatever it is that they're working through, it's going to happen. But you can't rush that process, that learning process. Everybody learns at a different rate and in a different way. I mean, it took me like 5 people to finally understand how to release or yeah, how to release without flinging my hand in the air. And I think a lot of that, was just my ego not ready to let go of things. And until
Yeah.
I was really ready to learn, was I able to learn? So everyone's a little different.
Yeah. It's like the old saying that the coach will appear when the student's ready, or when the
Yes,
student's ready, the
yes,
coach will appear. And once you
absolutely.
become ready, that person come by that taught you that one thing that helped you go through your problem because you was ready for the answer.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure my buddy Nick can testify to this because he tried so hard to help me with that. And I was just like, you know what? I will learn it another time. I'm not ready to change. I'm kind of stuck here, And I had that conversation with him of like, look, it wasn't you, it was me. It wasn't that you couldn't teach me. I just wasn't ready to learn. Like I really wasn't. But it is absolutely true. We kind of all learn at our own pace and our own style. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's always the problem we run into is trying to help somebody out. And I always tell the release shooters, they're shooting with the wrist strap. It's like, well, I'm gonna give you first lesson for free. Quit pulling the trigger. And then depending what the response is, that's your first and only lesson because you're not getting any more. Or okay, now let's go in and look a little more detail as why you're doing it. And some is like, okay, that's over there. They're not teachable. Just because the response.
No, and it's true though. It's like you got to meet people where they are at in that moment.
Right.
Um, and that's through life, not just archery. But yeah, you got to meet the person at where they're at. And fortunately enough, my buddy Nick didn't disown me for not listening to him at that time because I wasn't ready, you know. But yeah, you got to meet the archers and you got to meet the people at their current level and where they are, and that sometimes means, like you said, just not teaching them any further.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to the point where they're not going to pick up what you're putting down. And, once that happens, then you're wasting your time and wasting their time. You might as well find somebody else that's ready. Like you said,
Yes.
when you were ready, the person come by that give you that one little thing that helped your problem. And so now, are you releasing across your face like that, or are you still kind of plucking your hand out? Or
When I am much better at just kind of pulling through, and I end up at the back of my head. But if I'm honest, it's something that's always going to be a work in progress. It is, I might start off doing the right things, but when I fatigue, I think I tend to fall back into bad habits. So it's something that I've been working through. And I'm hoping I will have it pretty much dialed in by the end of the year. But like everything, we're human and we fall back into, muscle memory habits sometimes instead
right?
of focusing on the new thing that we want to learn. But for the most part, I'm a lot more consistent with the new release of letting my hand fly off of my. I mean, like I literally would just like send my hand flying back. But I don't do that anymore. I'm a lot better about it and catching when I had a bad shot. It's like, okay, let's go back to number one. We're going to, feet, hips. All right. Head turns. Okay. Everything comes to me. We're pinching that arm a little bit. And it's just me talking through my own process to make sure that I'm checking all the boxes and doing everything I need to and focusing on what I want, not on what I don't want, just realigning everything. But it is definitely way better than it was before.
Well, that's good. you know, when I was taking that course, teaching, back tension release, I know one person was in there, they paid all that money and learned all this stuff. It's going just fine. And they just went back what they're doing for. They didn't bother. They wasted their time, wasted their money, wasted instructors' time, and took up space that they could have given to somebody else that really wanted to learn, because all they want to do is they just went right back to what they're doing. They didn't take
Yeah.
anything hard. And I know the first time I heard back tension release, I didn't understand it. It's like, well, how do you know where you're shooting? Coming from firearm world, we do squeeze on triggers, and we don't use your back to do it because that's all locked in place. It's in its place, and you just kind of squeeze the trigger, but can't do that with a bow.
Yeah, yeah. And it all falls back to the same thing, when somebody's ready, they're going to learn. And if they're not ready, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. But
Yeah.
I, as you've probably figured out, arguing with the fool only proves that there are two. So why
Right.
argue?
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it never pays off when you get an argument like that. So yeah, it's um, lot of good information out there that you talked about that, I'm learning from you, as well as like we talked to, and as well as I'm hoping I pass it on something that you can use, and maybe you won't use it, but maybe somebody you see is like, oh, here, try this. I heard this works.
Mhm.
Try this.
Yeah.
And that's the great part of doing these podcasts is it's, we're trying to teach people and also get some good stories and everything else. So it's always been a lot of fun. And I just want to let everybody know that if you've been watching this long, we really appreciate you listening to us, or watching the video this long. And it's been great having you on here. And we have the podcast that goes out to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as learn the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. And coming soon, I'll have the archtalk101.com, but I don't have that set up yet. But that'll be some good stuff out there when I get that. So watch for that. But yeah, the podcast, anywhere you get podcasts from, as well as audible.com. That's a good place. It's free on Audible. It's one of those things. Just type in the name of the podcast you want, and pops up, and you can listen to them for free. And I have a lot of my listeners do it that way because it's automatic when new one comes out. They always get notified there's a new one because it just keeps going on, and so that's a good way to listen to them as well. And it's a lot of fun. Get a hold of me anytime you have any questions. I know Stephanie, you're going to be open to any questions. Just get a hold of you, and if someone want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
You can find me through Instagram or Facebook. On Facebook, it's Steph Core. I shortened the last name a little bit. And then on Instagram, it is little underscore loca underscore and I as the as the handle name. But Facebook might be the easiest way to find me.
You made your Instagram a little more difficult than your name, huh?
Yeah, I started off social media with Instagram before Facebook, so
Oh, yeah, and I'll try and find those and leave links to them so I can get a hold of you, and of course links to listen, to the podcast to get a hold of me and everything else. And it's been a lot
yeah,
of fun talking with you today. It's been quite enjoyable, and I know that's it's going to be a lot of fun for our listeners to catch up on what's going on. And it's been really great having you on the show. And in parting, what would you like to say to our listeners? Anything you want to promote or talk about, or what you'd like to tell your new archers or experienced archers or whatever? The floor is yours.
well, for the new archers, hang in there. It does get better. It's tough in the beginning. You take more misses than you do hits, and eventually that turns around. And for the other archers, just keep passing on the information that you have to the new people. We're definitely going to be creating a generation of amazing archers because they're getting, a jump start on things from what we've learned, and they don't have to experience. We can kind of bypass that for them. And anybody who has questions, reach out. I do try to answer everybody's questions. I do get Facebook messages a lot and Instagram messages with people asking me different stuff about archery. I have no problem hopping on there and chatting or doing a video call or anything if you have questions about stuff. And for me, I'm just grateful to have the exposure on the podcast. I do want to thank a couple of people that without them I wouldn't be where I am right now with archery. And that's Nick Hart with On Point Archery, Bob Lee Bose, and Three Rivers Archery. All three have supported me in a way that has allowed me to reach the highest levels that I've reached so far. And they continue to support me moving forward. So I'm super grateful for them and their sponsorships and all the help that they have provided.
Yeah, that's good. When you have somebody that helps out like that, it definitely give them a shout out, and I'll leave links to those people in the description as well. So if they want to reach out to them, they can. And I know Three Rivers Archery is a good place to get some of your supplies, and they've been around
Yeah.
for a while. I don't know how long they've been around for a long time because they were around when I had my store, 25 years ago.
Yeah, I get all my arrows and everything from them. So they're pretty quick, great customer service. And if you ever have any questions, they don't hesitate to take the call and answer anything you got.
That's good. That's
So
always good to know.
yeah,
Because I like when I hear good stories of companies that the archers are working with, and pass it on and let people know that, hey, this is a place to get some of your stuff. And basically, if you order them off Amazon, you get what you get. But if you order from like Three Rivers, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting new equipment, and you have a question, you call them up, and get the wrong product, you can call them up and find out, okay, what should it have been, and get it taken care of. And
oh yeah,
it's
they're really
just
good about all of that. Yeah, the customer service with them is great. Rob with Bobbly Bows, amazing guy. They're always super quick if I have any questions or need any help with anything or have any kind of equipment problems. They've always been really good. So I recommend them. And if you're looking for a teacher in California or someone to kind of bounce your stuff off of, Nick Hart at On Point Archery, he's always willing to help out. He's a really good guy. He does nothing but try to help people excel in the sport.
now, where is he located at?
He's out of Santa Barbara, California.
Okay.
So, but he does travel all over for competitions. The last one I saw him at was at Breaking the Barriers at the One Arrow National Shoot. So he travels all over, but he's a great teacher, has all the patience in the world to explain things. So I recommend him if you're in that area and trying to get started or want to do any kind of like group events or, parties with like your work parties or work excursion stuff. Like he does all of that. I've helped him with events with that, and it's a lot of fun. It's cool to see people try it for the first time, and he's really good about the energy he brings to those kind of events and stuff.
Yeah, that's I hadn't really thought about, have an event, where everybody goes to a bow shop and starts picking up a bow and shooting and that would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's great because you can do a bow shop kind of set area, or he can bring it to you depending on what you're looking for. So if it's something you're interested in, I would definitely reach out to him if you're in that area. But if you have questions, I know that he'd be happy to answer anything. I'd be happy to answer anything. We'll put the links with this so you guys can reach out.
Okay. Hey, it's been great talking to you. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host on Arch Talk 101, and Stephanie's been our special guest. It's been enjoyable talking with you. And like I said, we'll leave in the description links to all these things we talked about. Makes it easier for you to find them because I know me listening and trying to write them down, and yeah, that's kind of tough. But it's been great talking to you, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And yeah, like thank everybody for listening and watching the podcast, and we'll join you on the next one.
Thank you.